All right, hi everyone, I'm Patrick, KD9PRC. This is my first actual in-person GPSL. I've been into ballooning for a really long time. Zach, we met last year over Teams, like the morning of or something like that. Thank you for making Teams work for me last year. I did a little presentation last year on Meshtastic. That was kind of fun. I've been playing with DFM radio sondes a lot over the years, and every year kind of doing something different and interesting with it. And this year I'm here to talk about AI. This is what I'm spending a lot of my energy on these days, and how that might be interesting. And if you have questions, I'm a good person to talk to because I just like playing with it. So, and then I'm going to mention a little bit about RDZ Sonde, which is something that Bill was asking about earlier, about the TTGo companion app. And then I've got a little bit of time and some prompts for you all on what might get you all to think about how AI can help us rather than just making this all very boring. Because AI can make things really boring. It can just do all the work for you if you want it to, but it takes all the fun out of life. So, so anyway, a little bit more about me. I got into ballooning about 10 years ago, totally by chance. I bought a circuit board that had a Uputronics little high-altitude balloon silk screened on it, and I looked at the thing, and I went, what on earth that is? Went and Googled it. I had a look at it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And I studied computer science. I studied programming for the longest time. I spent a long time in managing people and teams and stuff like this. I moved around the world. I've traveled a lot, so the idea of getting in the car and chasing a balloon is obviously a lot of fun for me. And then I've been back in the Chicago suburbs for the last 6-7 years now. We're actually thinking about moving to Florida, of all places in the world, which is slightly different climate than Chicago area. But something happened in there with chasing balloons that I found that I like things that go up, and I found that I like things that go up really, really fast. And I kind of wish that I would have studied something to do with rockets. And so I left my big company job last year. I'm consulting at the moment and doing freelance IT. And I actually ended up teaching classes on AI coding, which is something, if you work in the software engineering world, is kind of running rampant at the moment. And so lots and lots of change going on in the world of software engineering. And so in the last year, you all met and heard my kids yesterday. So you've seen how much of a handful they are. And so I spend most of my energy just being at home and trying to be present to them and teach them stuff. But they love a good balloon launch, so they would not miss the opportunity to come to GPSL and see a group of people launch balloons. So most of what I'm going to talk about today is stuff that I've done with AI and balloons. So AI never really clicked for me when I first started using it. In fact, I really hated it for the first 6 months because I was annoyed that we'd been using AI for a really long time, but now we're using this other form of AI, which is now the modern chatbots and large language models. As a software tech, we've been using AI since 2015 or something like that. AI and the algorithms behind it are actually really old. The transformer algorithm that powers the AI that we use today was released as a white paper by Google in 2017 or something like that. So it's actually been around for a really long time. It's just the cool parts of it actually only came out relatively recently. And I thought the whole thing was just like a scam to steal my money and steal all of my personally identifiable information, sort of like a Facebook sort of thing. And so I kind of stayed out of it for a long time. But where it got me was when I started to write code with AI. I asked it to write a couple of, silly little scripts, and I was like, oh, actually, it knows how to do this, and it doesn't need errors. That's kind of cool. And I'm a software engineer. I know how to write code without syntax errors, but I'm busy. I'm a dad. Oftentimes I'm writing code one-handed, holding a sleeping baby. I first programmed a DFM radio sonde, holding a baby, doing it on my phone because I literally just didn't have the hours in the day to sit there at a computer and spend serious time in it like it takes to learn this stuff. And what got me was there was this, we called it the cicada apocalypse a couple of years ago in the Chicago area, where there was this emergence of these two different broods of cicadas, and it was so loud outside you couldn't hear yourself think. And right before this thing happened, I thought, oh, it'd be really cool if I plugged a microphone into a computer, put it on my front porch, and recorded the audio every day and sampled the audio and made a graph of the audio levels. And it was one of those things I'm never going to get time for. I plugged in the computer, I put it on my front porch, and I did nothing with it for about a week because I'm a dad, I'm busy. And I asked ChatGPT one day, I said, can you write me a piece of code that samples the microphone and presents it as Prometheus, which is a graphing system that sits behind Grafana that you see a lot if you click through on SoundHub, and make me Grafana graphs of the audio level. And it said, sure, and it spat out some code, like 5 seconds later. And I was like, I could have done that, but that would have taken me hours to learn. And it didn't work the first time. Don't worry, this is AI, it never works the first time. But it was close, and it got me really, really close. And I didn't understand at the time that this was just the beginning of it. And this is what got me thinking about how AI can be used for coding. And so, so that code ran, and I created Grafana graphs, and I could tell you, I had a graph somewhere that told me when the peak volume level was of all these silly cicadas on my house in Illinois. So that was pretty cool. But it really opened my eyes, and so I always tell this story because that's what made it click for me and turned it into something useful. So last year I left my job. I had a little bit of time on my hands. I was doing a little bit of soul searching. We were on vacation in northern Wisconsin, which started out being 2 weeks and ended up being 4 weeks because we didn't have to be home to get anywhere. And I thought to myself one day, I just had switched iPhone. I've been an Android guy forever. There was this companion app for the RDZ TTGo firmware that you had to sideload to get it on your Android phone. But true story, I was wandering through a marsh at 10 o'clock at night trying to find a radio sound like an idiot. It was cold and I was up to my knees in water and I couldn't find the bleeping thing. And I'm looking at the SoundHub map and I was just so frustrated and disheartened, and it's late and it's dark, and I pulled out the companion app and I just had this, oh, maybe I should try the thing, and it said walk 7 meters that way. And I walked 7 meters that way, and there it was in a patch of reeds, like suspended in water, but there was the little red light, and it was, you know, it was spot on. And thought that I needed that kind of precision because most of the time you go to recover a radio sound, it's pretty obvious where it is. On my drive up here, I found one hanging over a power line that had landed an hour before I drove by it. They're usually pretty obvious to find, and this one took me an hour of walking around and searching. And I switched to an iPhone 2 years ago, and I went, oh, this guy he's written the build, he hasn't ported any of it to iOS. And I asked Claude Code, can you do this? And it said, that's going to take about 6 months to do. And I said, boy, that sounds expensive. And I said, well, why don't you get started on it? And about 30 minutes later, it had done it. And I went, whoa, this is really cool. And it was one of the first things that got me into agentic coding was this. And I told myself then, I said, the guy who wrote this thing's never going to get around to it. Like all of us, you never have time for all the hobbies and everybody's last feature request. He's probably an Android user. He doesn't care. I'm someone who has a little bit of time on my hands to learn how to do this. And so it was one of the things that actually got me into using AI for coding. And so, so I'm happy to announce, so anyway, but real quick side note. So what it is, it's an app that runs on your smartphone. It connects to the radio receiver that runs on a TTGo board, which receives the radio sounds that are in your area. And you can get the same thing off the little OLED screen. You can get most of the same data if you're on soundhub.org, but this is giving you the data directly from the TTGo if you don't have internet. But also the really cool thing, the story that I had there, the difference in position between you where you are and where the sound is might actually be helpful. I've never needed it since then. I never needed it before then. They're always pretty obvious, but that one time, it really did it for me. And so that's why I kind of became attached to this app and wanted to try and spend more time on it. And so, so anyway, I'm very happy to show you. This is what it looks like running on my iPhone. One of the first times that I got it working, it took me more time to figure out how to build stuff on a Mac. In fact, I didn't even own a Mac at that point in time, so I had to take a little break from it for a little while and then eventually bought a Mac, literally just to be able to build it. And what it does is it just gives you all that information that's within there, all the same information that you get on SoundHub, but gives you like the relative local information. And I'm happy to announce that 30 minutes that it took was like 90% of the work to get the thing working and building and running on the latest versions of iOS. It's available on test flight for Apple phones. So I can send around these links later. But I've got automated builds working, so the developer of it, Hansi Reiser, if he just pushes commits to GitHub and tags releases with it, it will automatically push and go to both of the Play stores. That's my goal, is to be like his build person, so he can make changes to it and everybody can use it. And so I got an email from Apple actually yesterday telling me that I'm approved to release on the App Store, but it's not in there yet. I don't know why. I pressed the button and it's not. So it might take another few days or something like that. But a few people on the SoundHub Discord clicked on the link and have tried it so far, and it's working well for them. So, yeah.
So one of the other products just released one for watchOS. Are you going to do that as well, and also get Wear OS for us Android Galaxy Watch people?
I don't have any plans. I'm kind of a dumb watch person. I used a smartwatch like in really, really early days smartwatches, and all it did was buzz at me all the time, and it made me so crazy I literally threw it across the room one day and swore I would never put it back on. And this is the smartest watch I've ever bought since then, and I literally just use it for running.
Think about when you're traipsing through the swamp, you don't have to carry your tablet or your phone. You
Yeah.
just look at your screen and say, hey, it's 3 feet that way.
Yeah. I wonder how they work with Electron apps like this. I'll admit I don't know. I don't know. So no plans, but I don't know. With some of that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I don't have any devices to test it on, but there's simulators and stuff. You could probably give it a go. So anyway, for Apple, it's there. For Google, it's in what's called internal testing. And so, I think, Andrew, you tried it, right? And you had to sign up for something. It wasn't just click and install.
I had my email address to the thing.
Yeah. So anyway, for Google, if anybody wants to play with this, if you're on a Google phone, I actually need 11 more people other than me for Google to let me publish it. 12 people have to install it on their phone and leave it installed. So if you're a TTGo user and want to chase sounds with the thing, I'll send around links for this later. You don't need to screenshot my ridiculous. But yeah, it needs testers to make sure that it works. Most of what's there is what Hansi Reiser wrote years ago, published to GitHub, and I'm just back and forth with him on email and trying to help him, get this project going a little bit further. So I was what it did for me. So I've since then, actually, before I put that on the screen and distract you all with that, what I went down the rabbit hole on was actually learning Cloud Code at a point in time where everybody else was busy doing their day jobs, and now I actually teach classes on Cloud Code. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of months, is working with engineering teams and software as a service companies to teach people this stuff that is kind of like what Andrew just did. It's it's slightly more complicated than that. But if you're a software engineer and you're not learning it, I highly recommend taking some time and learning it, because that world is really changing. It's no longer the world of copy pasting code and seeing if it works. It's using an AI agent that will actually do all of that testing for you. And it kind of closes the loop really quickly and gets you from something that's 80% accurate to something that's 98, 99% accurate. And it's pretty cool what you can get done really quickly.
Isn't it frustrating where did you ever run into a scenario where you say, hey, write me a script that does this, and shows this, and gives me this output, and it says, here you go, and you paste it and it throws an error, right? Mm-hmm. You take the error, you throw it right back in, and it goes, oh, that's a comment. You did this. I didn't do anything. You wrote the entire script.
Yeah. So here's the fun part about using an AI agent to write. You tell it to write some code, and then it'll say, hey, do you want to go run it? And I'll say, no, you run it. And it goes and it runs the thing, and it says, hey, you've got Python installed over here. It doesn't work right. Or then it just goes and it fixes it. And there are some things that it will actually do the same sort of dumb things over and over every single time I start a new project. And I've gotten to the point where I just go, I don't care.
I hate it when something goes wrong, you say, well, that's wrong, this is probably will work, and it comes back and says, oh, you're right.
Yeah. I go, I know. Exactly.
The server can't be found when I try to do the Apple one.
I can't find it on the Apple.
I just
Okay.
downloaded it, so I've got it running.
Hey, all right, we got one. All right. Google or Apple?
Make sure, Apple.
Apple.
Make sure that the code is case sensitive.
Yeah. Anyway, these are not. Seriously, I'll write an email later so that you don't have to type these ridiculous URLs. We should probably do that with everybody's presentation at the end of all of this. Bill, can I send you an email so I can go to the next slide? So something that I'm working on tomorrow, I thought it would be fun to see how AI can help with balloon flights. One of the things I've always struggled with is that my mother has no idea what's happening during a balloon flight. I send her to SondHub, I send her to the SSDV website, she gets overwhelmed by what's going on there. And I said, oh, wouldn't it be so interesting if something could run all of that through like a vision interpreter for you and like look at your different telemetry and just like give her a status update every 5 minutes. So we're gonna see if my mom can follow this tomorrow, probably not.
What it really means is use your webcam and determine when she's got a confused look on her face and say, let's just.
I don't think my mom's gonna consent to that. And also, I don't expect her to stare at the laptop for 2.5 hours straight. But I don't know, I haven't found like a brilliant use case for what AI can do during flights. I can think of things for like prediction and launch site analysis and stuff like that if you have a primary and a backup launch site.
My colleague actually used, I think it was Claude, I'm not sure which one, but he has an app that I use now for tracking, and it actually actively, every new signal that comes in, it redoes the prediction. So
Oh, okay.
it's where it's updating the prediction with every minute.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
And actually on Iridium, it uploads it every 10 seconds.
Okay.
So if you look hard enough in that code, you might find Zach's call sign.
True story, I was working with it was Copilot, talking about Copilot at the time, or GitHub Copilot, and I asked it to make some GPS or something that was mine, and it popped up a warning and said, this code was, the basis for this code was found in a public repository, do you want to incorporate it? I was like, yeah, that was probably my repository.
It is good if you give it your own code, or if you give it something and say riff on this or make a change to this or use this to do this, it can actually do really, really good stuff. As long as you're within license limitations of like GPSL or...
Have it running on
Yeah.
the balloon with a down-facing camera and tagging vehicles that have IR transmitters on their roof and saying, hey, that's W0ZC in that vehicle there.
There we go.
Take my TV over here.
There we go. Anyway, there'll be something that's running tomorrow during the flight that I'm experimenting with. Tomorrow, I'm honestly flying everything that I flew at my last flight, which is a little bit over a year ago. I basically in about a year. I've been busy. I have kids. But I've been playing with a lot of stuff on the software side. I just spent the last month down in Cape Canaveral, and so I was sitting there tracking a radio sonde one night that was launched out of the Air Force Base, which tends to launch like 3, 4, 5 times a day whenever there's a rocket launch. And they launched these old LMS-6 radio sondes that are really rare and not very many people get to see. And I was like, oh, I gotta decode this thing. And I realized my SDR was broken. The one SDR that I brought with me on vacation was broken. And RDZ TT sonde does not have LMS-6 support. And there's an issue open for it. And people looked at it and were like, it's totally possible, but nobody cares. I asked Claude, and 5 minutes later had ported it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the board like physically able to get it in there in time to get telemetry. It landed out in the ocean. It doesn't really matter.
You didn't recover it?
It landed out in the ocean. This is a true story. I published this on my blog. Claude do an analysis of tide and sea levels and directions of wind and waves of where it was going to land. Watch the beach next day. I never found it. I did find one reported sonde that had landed about 5 or 10 K out to sea further than, and they found it on a beach 30 K north of there, a beach that I'd been to recently. And I was actually, there are nerds everywhere who will really take the time and find that serial number and go look it up and figure out where it came from. But it floated a long way in the water. So I tend to like tread lightly with AI written software engineer by trade, but the question is always like, where does it help? The minute you put AI into the mix with code, you're still a subject matter expert in like, how to do stuff in code, but you didn't write the code anymore. So AI becomes part of the stack. It's almost like the new programming language for you, which means like a couple of things. Like open source communities have like a lot of like love-hate relationship with AI coding right now. That some of them are embracing it, some of them are kind of being a bit careful about it, and some of them are actually saying, oh heck no, because actually the process of writing code, which can take hours and hours, is part of what makes you feel, why do we launch balloons? It's hard. We don't launch balloons because it's easy. Same thing with software. If it takes time for you to write software, then you're probably invested in the project and you feel like a member of the community in the first place. And if you do what I just did with this patch for TTGo Sond, like I have a prior, relationship with the software, I'm probably not going anywhere. But if I just like fired this patch out of the blue, what is to incentivize me to do a really good job when it only took me 5 minutes in the first place? And if you're reviewing that thing, you probably might look at that and go, boy, I don't know, this person didn't really spend that much time on it. A lot of open source maintainers have had a lot of challenges with just lots and lots of cheap code getting chucked at them really quickly that on the surface looks good and reads good, but actually is like a net negative for them because they get all these features pumped into their apps that they don't actually care about in the first place. So these are kind of my open questions for you all. If any of this sparks any interest in the but is there anything that you feel like we should be doing? Are there any opportunities that anybody's seen, or actually conversely, like negative things, like hey, like stay away from this or stay away from that or something like that as I experiment with all this? So yeah, Bill.
Should I recommend to high school students that they should pursue a career in software?
I go back and people actually generally ask me, should I bother to learn coding or should I just learn AI coding? And my honest opinion is you should do both. If you're interested in computers, like I don't think coding's going anywhere. I just think the old school way of manually keying it in, if you relate it to like a rate of coding of like a punch card type system, yes, the method of instructing the computer is changing, but the process, the mindset is not. You can give the most brilliant tools in the world to people who and they'll build whole big piles of slop that don't, maybe they'll work on day 1, but they will not work on day 90. And there are a lot of negatives that come out on the other side of it. But at the same time, you can't ignore it. Kind of like learning a new programming language. I think it's like learning a new programming language, that you need to learn a little bit of that to keep up with the pace and stuff like that people are doing, but you have to understand a little bit of what's happening. So,
I just wanted to analyze the whole balloon launch and tell me to wait 5 minutes before releasing so it doesn't come down into a tree or a river.
AI's it's not magic. If you can control when your balloon loses, that's the thing that always gets me. Whenever I look at predictions, unfortunately I lost a balloon very painfully into the back 9, and it was a rough day, and my kids are still sad about it years later. And I look back at it and I'm like, oh, 5 minutes sooner or 5 minutes later it wouldn't have gone there. But then you don't control when the balloon bursts. I mean, I know devices and stuff, but like generally speaking, it bursts at 32K or 34K, and you get excited if it's 34 instead of 32, but there's so much variability built into it anyway of how long it flies. So.
But you redeem code in test flight. Finally got it to work.
I don't know.
I didn't have to.
I'll have to find it for you.
Okay.
I'll find it for you.
I didn't have to put one in.
No.
Huh.
I'll say, we share that.
So, on Bill's question about
Yeah.
software development as a career, so I'm a CIO and oversee a team of developers.
Cool.
And I'm glad I'm at the point in my career. I think it's going to be really hard for a lot of, up and comers to come in, because to run AI effectively, you've got to know what you're doing. It's not good. It's not good if you don't know what you're doing, but yet you also have to build that experience somehow.
You have to build like the systems, like the conceptual understanding, but the slow part, the hands-on keyboard part, and the syntax errors part, you don't need to worry as much about that.
And just the intuition to say, yeah, that's BS, or, oh, that's a great idea, I never thought of it.
Yeah.
Some other use cases, do I trust code I didn't write? Yes, because oftentimes it's better than the code that I write. I'm not a full-time developer, I oversee developers. But like you were mentioning, I don't have babies anymore in my hands, but I get that. Now I try and jump on people out while you're trying to code. And this AI enables people with ADHD to be able to write good code, because you can sometimes I'll have like 2 Claudes running, working on 2 different projects, and just waiting for it, you know, bouncing back and forth, and I have enough concentration to keep it going in the right direction,
Yeah.
but I'm letting it do all the heavy thinking. One of the best use cases that I've come up for it personally is I asked Claude to review this for any logic flaws or something. I forget the terminology I used, but it found in my C code, it found a couple of unchecked buffers where I had
Okay.
19 characters allocated here, but I wasn't checking for 20. It was a greater than issue.
Right.
But it's great at going through and finding that, and it's cleaning up a bunch of things that I don't have the time or mental capacity to go through.
Maybe things you would never hit on a normal day.
I would never
Yeah.
hit them, and they were buried in there. They were logic things that you had
Yeah.
to look at 5 different functions to realize, oh, I forgot to initialize this. But the second time through, it initializes and it's fine. But that's why I always have to click that button twice to make it happen.
Right. Right.
Can you ask AI to test your software in terms of throwing all sorts of illogical things at it?
Depends on exactly what the software is, but generally speaking, yes. That's something that it can be really helpful for, is doing all that testing that people would never bother to do. And it's infinitely patient is like my favorite thing. And we talked a little bit about education in AI. What should you do and what should you study? One of the best examples that a friend of mine actually wrote a good blog post about the other day is, he said, if you're ever in unfamiliar territory with something that you're doing with coding and AI, tell it to write you a 5-page document that explains what the heck it's doing. And it will confidently spit it out for you 90 seconds later and explain what it's working on. And you can get, you can get it to actually say, hey, educate me on the C programming language. Like, what have I missed here? How is it that I don't understand this? Or how common is this kind of mistake? So yeah, it's infinitely patient in many ways. And yeah, you can get it to do stuff like that, yeah.
How long do you think we have before AI determines that we're all inefficient carbon-based bugs that need to be eliminated?
I will die before that.
I think it's already made that decision.
Yes, it comes.
I don't know. AI is still very short-lived today in terms of you ask it to do stuff and then it comes back and it waits. And
But it's writing codes for itself now, from what I understand.
kind of. It's enabling researchers to write code. It's not computer A is talking to computer B yet. It's computer A is at the console of the person for, version 2 or computer B. There's still a person there in the middle. And it's so much faster than it was even just a year ago for the people who are writing it at Anthropic and OpenAI, but there's still a person there. And actually the people working on it, I'd say particularly Anthropic, but I don't want to knock and hate, but particularly Anthropic is a little bit like, yeah, this could happen really, really quickly. We could get to that world that we're scared of, and we don't want that world.
Now, Claude is what you recommended. Are there any other AI programs you would recommend?
I would say Claude Anthropic makes Claude. And then OpenAI's coding tool is on the benchmarks almost as good. I would say in terms of interface and stuff like that, it's just as good. Codex. I use both of them. I teach Claude Code because it got better just a little bit early. It has better brand reputation within the coding world. They're both.
The PC board schematic layout AI, I've tried it. It wasn't so good yet.
I've seen it, but I've never gone into actually manufacturing PCBs. And then I see you guys do this stuff. And I do this.
There is one that they advertise an AI program for a certain
Claude itself just released something they use. I don't know if it's
Is that Claude Design? Yeah. Yeah, that's slide decks and marketing materials and stuff like that. There's only one way to find out. I mean, I'm a rocket nerd, so my favorite story was a year ago, a company that said, we let AI design the rocket engine and then manufacture it and 3D print all the parts and stuff like that. And I was like, I mean, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, but at the same time, it sounds like fun.
One
Claude likes Claude, Gemini, and him like to make a lot of assumptions, so I do a lot of planning before I let it code. And I found that in my instructions I give it, so I don't have to type every time, I want you to ask questions unless you're 97% sure you're doing the right thing I want you to do. And it will prompt me back and make sure it doesn't just assume things like, I don't need 30 features, I don't need more.
Right. Right.
That's a little trick I found that has saved me a lot.
So yeah, anyway, interesting world of AI. It writes a lot of cover letters and blog posts for you if you want, but actually, you know, to your point about talking about testing code, it's really good at reviewing your blog posts if you've already written them and you're about to ship them. I use it as an editor when I write.
love making my README MD files.
Yeah.
It'll go analyze a piece of Windows desktop software.
Yeah.
And wrote a whole MD file, and I was kind of skimmed through it like, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I could talk about AI all day, but I'll just say thanks. And if you ever want to talk AI to somebody who does AI coding basically for a living now at this point, if you have any ideas, wonder what's feasible, what's possible, I can probably tell you off the top of my head what would be feasible or how I might go about solving it. So thank you all. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.